Hey guys, it's Adam again, and we're going to go with our third resident, Logan Wall, for Global Day of Clay. We're doing about 20-minute demos of everyone, so please comment, and we'll get back to you if you're on a replay right now, or Logan can try to answer some of your questions. So Logan has a BFA from the University of North Florida, and this is her second year as a resident. So here she is.
Hey guys. Oh, your phone is different than mine. I think that's good though, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. So, I was just gonna talk a little bit about some of the biggest questions I get with my work. One of them being that, how I get things so precise. So, I have this square bowl here, and I make most of my work is thrown and altered. I'm using a red earthenware clay that I buy from Highwater, and I fired a cone 1 in an electric kiln. So, I threw this bowl originally, and about 2 hours after it was thrown, I added in my angles, and I use one of the dividing tools from MKM to measure out that. And it's important to make sure that you do this when your clay is really wet. I'm talking about squaring out this rim, because otherwise if you wait any longer than that, you're gonna have a lot of issues with cracking. So if you're looking for something that's this changed from a circle, then you want to start about 2 hours after you threw it and add in those angles. And then I usually wait until the next day to go back to my piece. So the process for making one of these bowls would be to then paddle all of my sides to be a little bit straighter. And if you can see, I've actually, I have a square at the bottom too. So I flip it over and I sure form each side so that it's as flat as I can get it right here. And so that's kind of the first couple of steps. And then what I do to really make my pieces very precise is I use what's called drywall sandpaper. And so that looks like this in the in the package, and it's a really big sheet, and I just cut them up into small, like 1 inch by 1 inch chunks. And you can see that it works kind of like a Sureform, so it takes away clay slowly, but with a Sureform you're really making a lot of marks that are kind of deep. And so this is my step that I use after I Sureform to really refine my edges. And to get it as precise as I want it, I really spend a lot of time taking away clay and then sometimes having to add it back and then take away more. So if I'm really working on a corner like this, and it's, I think, important to say that you don't want to use it flat against your clay like that, but you kind of want to use it at a 90-degree angle to your clay and make it stiff in your hands so that you can scrape away rather than kind of like smoothing out. So I'm actually removing little chunks of clay with this technique. And what's funny is that when I throw, I actually really like to spend a lot of time making it nice and smooth. And then I go back, and if you guys can see all of the texture on this bowl, I'm kind of just ruining all of that smoothing work that I had done when I was throwing, but it helps me to see my lines when I get started. So now what I'm focusing on is making this line straight from top to bottom. So I'll just go back with this tool, kind of refining that edge. And then for my smoothing process, which I like to talk about because it takes a very long time, but I feel like is very worth it, I use a metal rib the same way as I just was to scrape away the high points that are created when I use drywall sandpaper. So I'll just do one side of this so that you guys can see kind of how it changes. And my clay right now is still pretty wet. I don't really like to work with these bowls in the leather hard stage too much because the angles are so sharp. It really is prone to cracking on those corners at the top. So this will be a large serving bowl, and I brought, I have an example over here to the side of a smaller version of this bowl, but one that I grabbed out of the kiln this morning so I could show you what the glaze looks like. And then I'll talk to you guys a little bit about how I do my glazing. Alright, so now that I've smoothed out this side with my, oh, that looks kind of cool. So we've got this smooth side and still my rough edge, but now I go back to really kind of push that even further with my sponge. Just add a little bit of moisture to the whole thing, and then I use my red rubber rib to really compress all of those particles back in and smooth that. And then I always get some questions about like how my clay feels so soft. And after the firing, after the glaze firing, I should say, I actually go back anywhere that I have exposed clay. So I should give you an example of this. So this is a small version of this bowl that just came out of the glaze firing. And anywhere that you see this orangey red color, that's just my clay body that's still exposed. So now I would go back with I think 400 and 800 grit sandpapers and wet sand all of the clay areas, and it kind of just adds a nice smooth touch to the piece. And so when I'm thinking about my glazes, I want there to be some different textures going on. So I don't know if you can see in this lighting, but this white is like a glossy glaze. It's not super glossy, but it's definitely glossy, and I use that for functional areas. So anywhere that I think food is going to be plated or that you're going to be touching with your lip, I want it to be kind of glossy like that. And then I'm kind of playing with textures around the rest of the piece, so it's getting dirty now. But so these two matte glazes, they're very soft matte, and then we also have the texture of the clay that's in there. So kind of just playing with how you're holding the piece and what feels best to you. And so yeah, you can see I go from this really rough to really smooth surface. Oh, and this is a good example of how I finish the bottom. So once this is done being completely smoothed, I'll take it and I'll put it back on the wheel to trim out a circle in the bottom of my well, for my foot ring, but in that square. And so that's kind of the end result after I've trimmed it. Also, one thing that I thought about with these bowls to make them a little bit sharper was if you've ever thrown and altered on the wheel, when you alter, you're gonna get some curves that happen on the top edge. And so I've just kind of cut those curves off so that it's a nice flat line, kind of relating to the flat lines that are on the side of the piece. And so here are a couple more examples of some glaze work that I do. And I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an example of how I do this. So I use electrical tape and what's called art tape and a lot of wax, oh, and contact paper to tape up my pieces before they go in, before I pour the glaze onto them. So you can see anywhere that there was clay, there was either wax, tape, or contact paper applied. And I use the contact paper to give me the circles, right? So you can see on these two mugs, I have one that has a positive circle and one that has a negative circle. So what I have used to make that was just, and this is the contact paper that I'm talking about. We had to like line books with it in school and stuff. And so I just used the contact paper, and I actually have this nice 3-inch hole punch that I just punch it out. And so what's awesome about that is it gives me a negative, but it also gives me the positive. And so I can use these in different ways. So like on this piece, I've placed this positive right there, and I've used the negative to kind of mask off this circle. And then the straight lines, I just use 1/8-inch tape and regular size electrical tape. I'm sorry if you're commenting, I can't really see your questions, but I hope that I'm answering them for you. So I just brought this teapot over so that you guys could see an example of what something might look like before it gets glazed. This one has a positive circle right here that you can, it's hard to see because the contact paper is clear. And then I've used my electrical tape and art tape to mask off the rest of it. And this one has that negative circle right there. And so when I'm making my forms, like in this bowl, right, I've created 4 different planes for different glaze designs. And if you look all the way around the piece, you've got different things going on. And so I kind of like to think about melding the 2D with the 3D in my work. And so by creating these planes, I really am thinking more 2D when I'm approaching my glazing technique. So on this, even on this teapot, right, I've actually ovaled the teapot, which gives me more of a side, one side and another side, and I can think singularly about each side as I'm designing the composition that I'm going to put with my glaze. So I was going to kind of, with mugs, with these mugs at least, it's actually a little bit more difficult for me to think about my glaze design because it is round. And so I'm working on this new cup design that actually has a square, kind of like middle bottom section, because it does have a round bottom and a round top. But this is going to give me these flatter sides where I can really think about dividing up the surface. And so the way that I came to this glazing technique was actually through screen printing. So when I was in school, I took a screen printing class, and they had us do a very kind of simple approach to the idea of pushing ink through a screen. So what we did was we just kind of cut out a design with contact paper by using an X-Acto knife, and then we plastered that contact paper on the front of our screen, and then we just pushed ink through that. And so when I did that, I got really excited because I thought maybe I could use that in my work here. And so because I'm looking for more precision is when I really developed the tape idea. But the contact paper and the screen printing class that I took really developed this whole style of glazing for me. And it's really when I found out that I was interested in this more geometric abstraction approach to everything. I had been trying really hard to kind of figure out what I wanted to put on the surface of my forms. I was very interested in making the forms, but when it came to glazing, I was really struggling. And so when I developed this, I felt like it was just a good way for me to be able to kind of say some things, or at least bring out the different shapes in a form with these different geometric shapes, or I guess some of the characteristics of the form that I created with these geometric shapes on the side. It was kind of a very natural process of how this developed. And so how I would usually start to glaze a piece is by lining the inside first. So this white would have been taken care of, And now I'm going to tape up my outer design, my composition on the edges. And so if you can see here, I don't know about you, but I really like to finish whatever is in my bowl. So I'm always drinking out of the side. And because I have a square piece here, a flat edge would be really hard to drink out of. It would kind of just go all over your face. So I've glazed this corner so that has the glossy glaze now, and I'm thinking that whenever you're ready to finish your cereal in the morning, you can drink it out of that side, and that might be a little nicer than trying to drink out of this corner over here. Even though it's still smooth, it's like a glossy touch that we're more used to putting on our lips. So I would start by taping that off. And when I'm applying the tape, there's a lot of just like pausing and readjusting, maybe taking the tape off and putting it back on, because I'm trying to get these lines as straight as possible. So this is going to be the tedious part of my demo. But I can kind of show you how I do most of my work. And I usually like to play around with different designs. So I was just showing you two mugs that are the same form but glazed differently. I try never to do too many of the same thing. But with bowls and things that people may want to buy in pairs, I kind of try to think about how they're gonna stack too. So with these bowls, I actually stacked them when I was glazing them to try my best to kind of line up some of the characteristics of the glaze, right? So they're kind of meeting all the way around. And then another thing that I like, that I have to think about actually, is how my glazes are going to be separated from each other, because I know from testing that my glazes don't really interact with each other too well. Like my white glaze doesn't look very good if this black was like bleeding into it. So I'm always thinking about how I'm going to separate them, and it's a little easier to see with the mugs that I've thought about that. So I always have like an 1/8 inch between one glaze and the other, and my last step when I'm taping up a piece is to make sure that I've also thought about doing that around the whole rim and around the bottom edge. I used to not do it on this bottom edge, and I would just wipe it like everyone does, and but I realized that it's so important when you're thinking about a piece to really relate the whole thing together. And so by adding that little tape on the bottom and making that line very precise, it kind of really adds a lot of consideration to the design.
Max says, looks great.
Hey Max. Alright, so now I'm going to section off where I will be doing my contact paper. So one of the things I spend a lot of time in my studio doing is separating contact paper from the backing, which there's got to be a better way to do it. I just haven't really come up with it yet. Maybe I just need a little minion that's always separating my contact paper when I'm glazing. So I'm bringing this circle right up to the corner of, or right up to the edge of my corner. And then I do usually leave some on this top edge so that any glaze that I pour over is not going to pour into my bowl. But that's also where wax comes in handy. I'm glad I have this example to go off of, because when I'm in my studio and just working without anyone watching me, I can take forever to just decide what type of design I'm going to put onto a piece. I don't really think about it when I'm making. A lot of people I know do think a lot about what's going to go on the side of their piece, but when I'm making, I'm really consumed by the form and precision, and I know that I need these lines to be precise, because when I go to glazing, if my lines in my form are not right, then it won't look right with the lines in my taping. And so then over here you can see that I've got this kind of straight line that turns into a curve and goes down. And so that's when I've used like a quarter of this negative hole and kind of put it on there.
Logan, where can people see your work and find out more information about you?
Well, at this moment my website's down because I want to update it, but you could go to my Instagram and find some images there, but my website will be up soon. And my website is listed on my Instagram, or will be once it's fixed up again.
Sarah is asking, do you have a favorite brand of contact paper?
I haven't really experimented much with different brands, but this is just like the contact brand is what it says. So it just looks like that. And what's cool is that I used to have a ton of different shapes in this, and so you can find these at the store. They're not the cheapest thing, but you never have to really buy them again. And I have like squares, triangles, and a ton of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, that was pretty much what I was going to show you guys today. And I can give you a close-up of what this looks like right before we log off here. Yeah. Any other questions, Adam?
That's it.
Cool. Alright, so you can see here, this is where I'll have that nice curve, that positive curve, and then here I've blocked off for my negative circle. And then yeah, that's about it. So I should say though, when I apply my glazes, I just hold them upside down and I pour with a measuring cup back and forth a couple of times to get them on there. And that's it. Yeah. Thank you guys for watching.
Thanks guys for watching. If you have any questions, you can write them in the comment section of this video and we'll try to get back to you. Otherwise, you can also look on our website. It's clayartcenter.org. Bye.